Hi everyone! So, myself and my good friend Lord Christopher Monckton, who is the world's best known climate skeptic, have decided to make a video series on climate realism and explain to you some scientific facts about climate change and climate realism, in fact. So we are going to debunk the main arguments coming from the side of the climate alarmists and explain why most of what you hear in the mainstream media is nonsense. A major issue that I see with the mainstream narrative surrounding climate change is that we are being bombarded with only half-truths. It is very easy to debunk and question those half-truths, but most people don't because they think that we can trust the experts. As you know, there is this consensus myth going around that says that 97% of scientists agree that climate change is real, or something like that. But is that really how science works? By, first of all, asking very vague questions that don't really tackle the core problem at hand. And does science really reach its conclusions just by counting heads among experts? And who are those experts?
No, Naomi, the physical sciences are not a democracy. Science isn't done by a show of hands. It's not done by a ballot. It's done by careful observation and measurement, followed by the application and development of rational scientific theories based on the data and expressed in the language of science, which is mathematics.
But even scientists seem to talk about consensus. Here's what I found on the website of NASA, for example, and I quote, "Multiple studies published in peer-reviewed scientific journals show that 97% or more of actively publishing climate scientists agree. Climate warming trends over the past century are extremely likely due to human activities."
As we shall see in this series, one reason why one can't rely upon any claimed 97% consensus is that even if there were such a consensus, which, as we shall see, there isn't, the mere fact of the existence of that consensus would tell us nothing at all about whether the proposition to which that consensus is said to adhere is true or false.
But then the NASA website goes on to say, "Most of the leading scientific organizations worldwide have issued public statements endorsing this position."
And yet, all but one of the scientific organizations didn't even take a head count among their own members before issuing such head count statements on behalf of the membership. These statements about consensus, therefore, are political, just as the scientific societies themselves have become political rather than scientific. They're more concerned about making profits at the expense of taxpayers than about pursuing true, objective, rational, properly researched, based on data, science. If they were really interested in true science, they would never issue any statement trying to justify their scientific position, such as it is, by claiming, falsely, as we shall see in this series, that there is a consensus about it.
But I remember that in May 2013, Barack Obama made a very popular tweet that is now probably the most trendy argument for climate change. 97% of scientists agree climate change is real, man-made and dangerous. So, Christopher, what prompted him to say that?
Barack Obama was referring to a paper published by John Cook, a failed cartoonist, in a science propaganda journal. Cook said that he and his friends had read 11,944 peer-reviewed papers on climate and related topics published in the 21 years 1991 to 2011, and that 97.1% of them, by implication about 11,600 papers, had said recent warming was chiefly man-made. In fact, as we shall see elsewhere in this series, only 0.3% of the papers cited by Cook and his colleagues actually stated that recent warming was mostly man-made. but Cook reported that 0.3% as 97.1%. And if, when you're watching this video, you've never heard that fact pointed out before, then you should ask whether the news media are reporting climate science fairly. There is no 97% consensus.
Well, if that was true, then at least it could be said that a consensus existed.
But it was not true, and even if it had been true, and it isn't true, some 2,400 years ago, the Greek philosopher Socrates said that argument from an imagined consensus of supposed experts constitutes not one, but two logical fallacies. Now, a logical fallacy is an argument in which the facts do not necessarily or validly entail the conclusion. Socrates said that argument from consensus is both the fallacy of appeal to the authority of imagined experts, and those experts may simply be wrong, or they may be making more money by pretending something is true than by proving it scientifically to be true, and also the fallacy of head count, deciding scientific truth by counting heads and taking a vote. Science is theory backed by data. It is not mere opinion, however sincerely held. And even if the opinions were held by 97%, that would tell us nothing about whether the science behind those opinions was true science. Nothing whatsoever.
I think the late science fiction writer Michael Crichton put it best when he said, "If it's consensus, it isn't science. If it's science, it isn't consensus." I want to say thank you so much for everyone who is watching this first video in this series right now. And feel free to share this information around with your friends and family, because we aim to explain climate science in an interesting and concise manner. The facts are on our side. We are not heading towards the apocalypse. You are not a parasite on this planet, and there is no need to panic. I don't want you to panic. I want you to think.